My name is Clifton, and I am the founder of Mindful Business Matters. I'm a collaborative rainmaker for service businesses, helping them cultivate the connections and the leads they have to bring in a sustainable client base, either for their practice, for their firm, or for their company. So I work with people one-on-one, I work with intact teams within companies, and I also work with small firms that are growing their organization. Now, when you hear the term goals or the new year or resolutions, we're going to talk a little bit today about why that isn't enough. And today you're here to hear the content of Ignite Your Inner Leader, and I'm going to share with you some of the components that come behind the goals and the resolutions to make them more attainable and accessible to you. How does that sound today? So you're on the plane to Arizona. If you're not going to Arizona, it's time to get off the plane. I love that announcement, don't you guys? So just a little background. I see some new faces. Some of you don't know me, some of you do. And I just want to give you a quick idea of where I come from. I spent 20 years in traditional career, spanning industries of retail department store, restaurants, insurance, and chemicals, in positions of management, operations, human resources, as well as sales. My last position was in a chemicals company, and I was a sales coach for 100 industrial salespeople at the chemicals company. And so that was a real pivotal learning for me as I stepped into entrepreneurship, which I've been for now 9 years. Now, I used to call myself a recovering serial entrepreneur because Mindful Business Matters is the 4th iteration of my business in 9 years. So you might hear that and say, wow, Christine, can't you stick to one topic? And I happen to believe that we're organic beings and that our interests and tastes change over time. And I was able to bring that into my entrepreneurship. As I began to evolve and learn, I was able to then bring more information to people as I evolved and learned. And so I tweaked the names of my company, and in essence, the service that I provided was similar in all 4 iterations of what I've done so far. And the theme, the consistent theme, is part of what you're going to hear about today. The theme is that my inner leader and what motivates me to get out of bed every single day is that I believe that everybody matters and deserves to be heard. I believe that conversations are a lost art, that we're behind screens of all sizes, and that our conversation muscles are atrophying from unuse. Some of the young people today, nod your heads if you feel this is true, haven't even learned how to have constructive conversations. Do I see some heads nodding? Yeah. So how do we combat that? And that's part of what I bring to the world. Now that's the outer part of what I do. The inner part is that every day knowing that when I wake up, my choices are all going to be based in a decision making around my purpose, which is helping connect human to human. So think about what I told you that I did. I'm a collaborative rainmaker, and I help those practitioners and companies connect and find leads and clients that they can serve. It's also true for leaders. How many of you lead a team of people? Raise your hand. Okay? Right. How many of you are parents? You're leading a team of people, my friends. Okay? How many of you are entrepreneurs? Raise your hand. Okay? And how many of you work for another company? You work for a company. All right. Today, you're going to learn something for yourself that you can draw through any area in your life. It's not only fueling your self-motivation, but it also will fuel your ability to motivate other people. How does that sound? Okay? So, igniting your inner leader. We want to start by talking about that outer leader that I mentioned. If you Google leadership using the interwebs, as I like to call it, you're going to find all kinds of checklists about what to say and what to do. That's what shows up on the exterior of leadership, is what you say and what you do. And quite honestly, people are, even unconsciously, sometimes consciously, assessing whether what you say is aligned with what you do, right? Some call that integrity. That's what I call it. So today, though, as I mentioned, what you say and what you do is fueled by something else. And we're going to talk about that inner leader in a minute. So let me ask you this. What % of people achieve their New Year's resolutions? Who wants to guess? Louder? 10, 30, 20, 1%. Okay, a cynic in the back row there. Between 8 and 9% of people actually achieve their New Year's resolution. Now, here's an interesting fact. What percentage of people as a whole, it's not on the slide, set New Year's resolutions? Any guesses? 80. 80%. Anyone else? Good guess. 70%. Anyone else? Try 46. Interesting. So think about that. Half of the population set them at all, and of the half, 8 to 9 actually achieve it. Now, I happen to think that's because of two things. One, they're taking on more. They're not looking what they're already doing and deciding what's no longer aligned with who they are. That's part of inner leadership. Secondly, they're rushing outside of themselves to do goals and stuff, and they aren't checking in to see where that's coming from. When I was in corporate, as I was finishing my 6th year in HR at my chemicals company, my HR director said, Christine, the managers here only see you as the HR person, so you need to get business on the books so they know you're about business. And I said, listen, I've managed department stores and restaurants for 10 years, and I have an undergrad in business. And he said, it doesn't matter, they see you as the HR person. And so they paid for my MBA. So a year into my MBA full-time and working full-time, I was completely exhausted. Completely exhausted. I was sitting for close to 15 hours a day between work and studying and going to class, and I was completely burnt out. And I didn't know why. I should be doing this. This is a goal that my boss said I should be doing. I didn't know it at the time, but I just wasn't aligned with that goal. It wasn't really something I wanted to do. And sometimes not feeling like doing something isn't just resistance or procrastination. Sometimes it's your intuition telling you that it's not aligned with who you really are. And we're going to talk about intuition a little later as well. So think about that. Maybe that speaks to you in your life as well. The next quiz is blank goals. Anybody know what those 5 spaces before the word goals are? It's a pretty common term for goal setting. SMART goals. Anybody ever heard of SMART goals? SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable. Do you want to? I have a partner in crime over here. Yeah. Achievable, realistic, and time-based, right? But all of those 5 components are out there. It's all this stuff out there, not what's happening inside of the person. Okay, last quiz. Guys ready? Good thing you had your caffeine this morning, right? Success is what % action? So if action were 100%, or if success is 100%, what % of it is made up of action? Doing. Guesses? 100%. 99? Anyone else? Ding, 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 ding. 20% of success is action. Take a look at this from Tony Robbins. 80% of success is due to psychology, your mindset, beliefs, and emotions. And only 20% is due to strategy or the specific steps to get things done. So think about your life, your family, your business, or your company, or even your team. How much weight do you put on the outer stuff? A lot of weight. So the reason I'm bringing this up first is because we are in a culture of doing. Doing, 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 not a culture of being. And so I'm going to invite you to consider the next components that are about the being part. Okay, does that sound good? We're going to harmonize all that practical stuff with a little bit more intuitive stuff. So let's talk about inner leader. Inner leader is about that inward contemplation that you take as a human being. This is the being part of what you do. It's made up of what you believe and then what you choose. And we all have belief systems. And what you believe and what you choose is what feeds what you say and what you do, which is that outer leader piece. Okay? So what is this? Anybody recognize this symbol? It's X factor, okay? The cool thing about inner leadership is that nobody has the same components or purpose, calling, belief, we're going to talk about your why in a second, as you do. And that, my friends, is your X factor. How many of you have heard the term unique value proposition or unique selling proposition? I say it in this language because I spent 20 years in corporate, okay, and we used a lot of those words. Some people in entrepreneurship today call it your personal brand. You've heard that too, yeah? Even professionals, it's recommended that you look at your personal brand. Whatever you call it, that is your X factor. How many financial services people do we have in the room today? Insurance or financial advising? Okay, banking. All right, so about 80% of your hands went up. And so I hate to break it to you, but what you do isn't any different. But you are special. And until you bring that specialness through what you do, you'll continue to be oatmeal. You'll continue to be the same. And you know what? You heard what I said before. I believe everybody matters and deserves to be heard. Quite honestly, I think the world is cheated without your voice and your work in it. And it can only fully show up when you embrace the inner and begin to allow it to come through. So let's break down inner leader. Let's talk about beliefs first. Beliefs are made up of your purpose or your calling, I call it. Simon Sinek is a thought leader in the marketing realm or leadership realm. Anybody heard of Simon Sinek? He says he's an optimist, but his last name is Sinek. I love that. And he talks about your purpose, cause, or belief is your why. You can look him up on TED.com, and I think he's at about 10 million views on his TED Talk right now. It's also about mindset. Remember the quote from Tony Robbins? It's about the psychology. It's how your mind is operating. How many of you believe in the power of positive thinking? Okay, yeah, almost every hand went up, right? Or what you think about, you bring about, right? So this is what we're talking here. Part of the inner leader is your belief system around these components and how your mindset is designed. And let me tell you that your beliefs can change. Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy. You can change your belief systems, and that's the glory of it. Now let's talk about choice. Remember I said there's two facets to inner leader, belief and choice. So your choice then becomes your vision, but also your goals. Now, how are those different? Vision is the overarching imagining that you have for what it is that you choose to do or what you're all about. So how many of you have done a vision board? Or maybe you've created a company mission, vision, value statement, right, with your company. This is the overarching picture of what you want the world to look like in the aftermath of you being here, okay? Goals are specific milestones that you then set. When you meet a goal, you accomplish it, and then you got to set another goal, and then you accomplish it, right? So that's almost like interval training, right? Because you're going to stop and start with these goals. Yet your vision is always leading and guiding you. Everyone following how those are different? Now, my future husband, Simon Sinek, says, that the vision is the infinite game and goals are the finite game. And you need both because the vision is what fuels and the goals are what makes each thing tangible. Does that make sense to everybody? Good. All right. So let's talk about my Simon a little bit. He equates in his book, Start With Why, the brain with the why and choosing and deciding on what your why is. The limbic brain is the primitive brain, and it is based on emotion and decision making. So the caveman made decisions based on emotion. They didn't have language. Our new brain carries language. The old brain, primitive brain, still today is what drives our decision making. So think about those posts on Facebook that you feel like clicking because it says, you won't believe this cute kitty cat, right? Or I was shocked to see what this animal did, right? That's clickbait. They're trying to emote an emotion so that you'll click through, and that's what drives your decision making. Now this is true for your own self, your decision making, and it is also true for your family, your team, your leads, your prospects, your clients. They make decisions also based on emotion. All right, so back to inner leader. These are the 3 keys of inner leadership. That when you're clear about your why, your purpose, cause, or belief, as Simon calls it, as Simon says, it ignites the confidence in yourself to then make a decision. So while it's not completely linear, it does happen that way. This is inner leadership, is going within, looking at your belief systems and your mindset so that you gain the clarity of purpose that you have inside of yourself. That gives you confidence, and then that feeds your decision-making fuel, okay? I love this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. When we are in the embryonic state, the clump of tissue that forms the central nervous system, which is the brain, is the same clump of tissue that then forms the enteric nervous system, which is digestion and stomach. So when you talk about going with your gut, there are literally the same cells in your gut as in your brain. How can we stand true in something that's guiding us from gut or instinct and be able to verbalize it to a spouse, to a team, to a child, to a prospective client in a way that doesn't sound too wackadoodle, right? So that is what we have the opportunity for, is that now that we have this inner leader working inside of us and we're stoking that fire to ignite that inner leader, now we're charged with, how do I stand into the world in a way that might be different than I have in the past? If you haven't yet watched Steve Jobs' commencement speech at Stanford in 2005, look that up on the YouTube, and it's a very powerful 20 minutes. And in it he says, because believing the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, aka intuition, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference. Now, is he a man who operates from instinct and gut? Yeah, pretty powerful stuff. So now the story. This is Sandy Saucelli. She's a client of mine. She happens to work in the holistic industry, and that industry, as I describe it, are things like massage, energy work, Reiki, that type of thing, spiritual guidance. She has a driving passion to help other burnt-out professionals not be burnt out, because that's her story. And so as we coached together, she wanted to start bringing her work into a corporate environment. And she was so frustrated that none of the people were returning her calls or answering the follow-up that she was doing to say, I want to bring this program to your company. And so she hosted an event that she only had 3 registrations for. And she called me up and she goes, I'm going to cancel. I said, okay, what's causing you to want to cancel? And as I coached her, she decided that it was just fear. that wanted her to cancel, so she was going to hold that event. Well, guess what happened? 4 weeks after that event, she bumped into one of the 3 people who showed up in her office building who worked for a company on a different floor, and that woman said, "I've been meaning to call you. I want to bring your program into my company." You can't connect the dots looking ahead. You can only connect the dots looking back. And so part of that talk by Stephen Jobs, said that you've got to trust in karma, faith, God, whatever that thing is for you, because we can't know fully what is going to be happening in the end. How about this for a story? Everyone knows that Simon's my future husband, except for him. So everyone has heard this for years, how much I admire his body of work. Out of the blue, last June, a friend of mine forwarded me an email, a free ticket to a sales conference in New York City where Simon was going to be speaking. It was a 2-day event. I looked at my calendar. I was solidly booked for 1 day, and I wasn't able to make changes. I went to look at the schedule of speakers. Guess which day Simon was speaking? The day that I was not booked up. Free ticket, $500 value. So I'm in the city, which I don't love to do. I'm listening to my Simon speaking. And as I'm sitting there listening to him, because this was one of my dreams, was to hear him speak live. He doesn't speak to the general public. And I said to myself in the audience, I wonder what it would take for me to meet him. Just set my inside voice, right? My inner leader. He finished talking, goes off the stage. The announcement says, author signing by Simon Sinek. Get in line. There's my Simon. All by not only inner leadership, but also saying what my intention was, okay? Anybody know who these folks are? It's hard to tell, they're in the water. Yeah. Michael Phelps and what was? Ryan Locke. Who's Ryan looking at? Michael. What's Michael looking at? Vision, right? He's not looking at the competition. He is competing against himself. You're probably tired of hearing of him, but I'm going to do one last thing, which is what you do is proof of what you believe. So we talked about inner leader, we talked about what you say, and it's also about what you do, being in integrity with who you really are. And people pick up on that, sometimes consciously, a lot of times unconsciously. And so living that aligned life is what brings health and wealth to your life and your business. Thank you, everybody. Going to take questions. In a healthy way, I believe in divide and conquer, which means that you're probably not directly managing those 100 people. There are probably supervisors or sub-leaders in the organization. So getting that management team or supervisory team or lead on board is key, okay? How do you do that? Becomes the question. How you do that is by helping facilitate their understanding of their role in the mission, vision, values of the company. So for example, I do a workshop for intact teams where we take the company mission, vision, values, and I facilitate in that training program the individual person's, what we just talked about, calling, vision, purpose. Then we look at the company mission, vision, values so that they can see how what they are about as a human can be integrated in what the company mission, vision, values are. So that's one piece. It takes a little effort. But that divide and conquer, again, in a healthy way, helps you reach, let's call it 10 people perhaps, maybe less, because then they're going to move down and operate in that fashion into the employee base. It takes time. Culture change is not quick. And in today's environment where there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of fear of losing jobs, there are people hanging on in employment. Remember, I spent 11 years in HR, so I know this. They hang on in employment out of fear. And that's a whole nother biology reflex or response that happens in the body. When our fight or flight mechanism is on, the correlation is inverse in terms of trust, collaboration, and cooperation. So the more anxious and the higher the stress, the lower the level of cooperation is. Now, the second way I'm going to answer that is, if you are an employee, then all you can do is start with you and your why and purpose, and look to the person to the right of you and say, how can I help you also fulfill your purpose, your calling? And then the team gets together and says, okay, we're going to have each other's back. And the number you share is really interesting. Back in caveman days, when villages or communities got larger than about 150, they naturally split off to form new villages, because our ability to influence a group larger than that isn't there. They did it intuitively. So when you think about companies today who are laying off and who are making managers do more with less or manage more with less, it makes it harder to touch that many people. One of my newest clients is growing a legal firm in New York City, and she never was taught in law school how to lead a team. She was taught about the law, and she's had some major turnover in her tiny little practice. So she finally realized she needed to improve her skills. And when I taught her the communication method, I use a 3-step communication method when having constructive conversations. Her email to me is, I'm so frustrated. That nice system that you taught me isn't working. And it shows me what her beliefs are, right? That I'm talking nice instead of there being really grounded proof in engagement of other human beings in that model that I teach, right? It's based on nonviolent communication. So I know now my next session with her is going to be about what? Beliefs and mindset. Because she thinks she's just being nice. And of course that's going to come across unconsciously to her staff as out of integrity, because she's doing something on the surface that she doesn't believe. We can be different together. And there are ways to hear, receive, and converse with people who have different beliefs that we do. So for business ownership, one thing to think about is if you're chasing prospects, then you probably haven't articulated your purpose, your why very well, or they don't believe what you believe. And if they don't believe what you believe, stop chasing and move on to the next, right? So again, we have to share what it is we believe. We have to share our vision. It has to be articulated somehow so people can go, do I believe that? Or, oh, I know Jane who needs that. Or they're going to take you in their mind share and remember. Because what you said is specific enough that they're going to say, oh my gosh, 6 months ago Christine said, ... Prevention is having a skill set. To prevent something, people need a skill set to deal with that thing, right? The skill set is twofold for organizations. One is, how well are they articulating their mission, vision, values to the company, right? How effectively are they doing that? And then how well are they engaging their employee and understanding what the values of the company are? Most companies have value statements around employees, what they believe about employees. Now, below that then becomes that skill set of how do we have constructive conversations, right? Is that skill set. So part of it is that. And the other part is that you've got these belief systems with every single person in that organization that could be the same or different than the organization. And for that piece, I believe in curiosity and asking questions. And you can do that in a constructive way using the model, the conversation model that I use. But often we hear something and we react or respond. Many of you are in the business of advising others in some way, shape, or form, right? Right? Your services. And so people ask a question, we answer it. So the skill set to learn is answering a question with a question to better understand, or answering a response, reaction, dispute with curiosity. So what's really behind it? You know, what's really going on? And the deeper you get, the more you're going to realize what that person is carrying around with them, which more often than not has nothing to do with work.